Welcome to the Action Sports Racing Highlight Show, brought to you by Ohio Motorcycle and Hatfield McCoy Trails. Today we'll be covering round number 5 in August from the 2013 Action Sports Grand Prix Championship season. We have a great day of racing in store as we take a look back at all the action that happened at round number 5. We had great weather in store at Action Sports for the day of racing. A lot of the heavy hitters from the motorcycle pro classes, as well as a couple big names from the ATV pro classes, and we have had all of our mini riders on hand that were digging it out for the Action Sports Grand Prix Championship title. Like I said, we had a perfect day of race action for round number 5. We'll post it to you right now here at Action Sports TV. We roll into our first session of racing, which included the lightweight A class, the 200B 4-stroke lights class. The heavyweights are open, and our decade riders. You see Sam Evans, Colin Thomas, and the rest of the boys at the green flag waved. It was Zach Clampett to the inside, but around the outside, Jason Ross with the hole shot. As they headed into turn 2, Ross would swing wide. Sam Evans and Zach Clampett would split him, and Evans would take the lead as they headed towards the downhills for lap number 1. 125, actually the open class was up next. Keith Gwynn had the whole shot, but around the outside of him was Rory Mead from New Zealand. As they rounded turn 2 and turn 3, Mead would take over the lead as they headed towards the hill section on the motocross track. 200B in the 4-stroke lights class would be Hunter Ayers with the whole shot, but around the outside of him was Devin Byer, who's won all the rounds so far except for one in the 200B class, will take the early lead off the start. Moving back into your heavyweight B class, actually it was your lightweight novice class. Adam Preston in the 104 had the whole shot, and the early lead. Sneaking up the inside was Christian Walter, and Isaiah Andrews would tuck into second as they started early racing on lap number 1. In the pro class, at the end of lap number 1, Evans would control the lead. Clampett would run in the number 2 spot. As Evans would continue to work his way towards the front, Clampett would have to play chase in the early going. Third in the pro class would wage on. Isaac Walton, Colin Thomas, who was off to a slow start aboard the Kawasaki, would try to play catch-up aboard the Gloucester native as they headed towards the completion of lap number 1. An inside pass attempt would nearly cost Thomas valuable time on the racetrack, but he would hold on for 4. Chris Montgomery, Tristan Landrum, and Jason Ross would round out the order at the end of lap number 1. Evans, as he headed toward the finish, would still hold that gap over Clampett in your pro class. Clampett would be on the charge. Thomas would work his way into 3rd. Walton 4th, Montgomery 5th. Landrum and Ross would round out the field. In your open class, Rory Mead would make a quick pass over DR Atwood to take over the top spot, as Jake Walters would slide into 3rd aboard the 77 KTM. In the heavyweight B class, it was JD Performance Suzuki rider Jay Downhour who would take hold of the lead early and would not relinquish it for the first couple laps. Byer would finish the first lap in the number 1 spot in the 200B class ahead of 4-stroke lights leader Jordan Strickland. Hunter Ayers aboard the 125 would check in for 2nd, and John Krebs in 3rd in the 200B class. Austin Evans would roll through 2nd in the 4-stroke lights class with David Wright aboard the 619 in 3rd. Andy Chapman would roll through the first lap in the number 5 spot in your open class. In your novice class, Michael Nutter was the early leader. Alex Ankrum would be 2nd and Adam Preston in 3rd. At the end of lap number 2, a strong battle for 3rd place would wage on, with Walton leading the group over Colin Thomas, who would resurge from a crash. Montgomery would be in the 5th spot, Landrum in 6th, Ross in 7th aboard the Yamaha. Behind them would come your open class leader Rory Mead aboard the number 3, as he would start from row number 2 and continue to charge towards the front group. Halfway through the race, Clanfith would experience a crash that would cost him about 10 seconds of time, allowing Evans to slowly close the gap aboard the number 27. Walters would take over the lead in the open class after Mead experienced technical problems late in the race, while Beyer would continue to lead Strickland, as Clanfith would hold on for the win ahead of Evans. Montgomery, Ross would take 4th, Landrum would round out the top 5. Beyer would hold on to the 125 200B class win ahead of Beccarelli and Neil Rankin. D.R. Atwood would take the heavyweight B win over Larry Taylor. Jordan Strickland would take the 4-stroke lights win. Jake Walters would take your open class victory. Bill Lane would win the post-vintage class. Tony Upton would take the decade win. And your lightweight novice class, Nutter would hold on over Ankrum. That was the end of session number 1. So we head into the 3rd session of the day. The mini class riders, which include the mini seniors, the juniors, the super mini riders, and the 65 7 to 11 competitors. The ones to watch for were the Honda and the Yamaha mounted of Garrett Lauterbach on the Honda and Yamaha mounted Ryan Richards. Off the start though was the 121 machine of Aaron Magditch aboard the KTM. He would take the early lead and lead all the 85 riders around to the downhills to begin lap number 1. At the start of the 65 class, it was Logan Riley aboard the 99 who had the early hole shot, with Joey Cunningham and Blayson Moore slotting into 2nd and 3rd, and Timmy Harris in 4th as they rounded into turn 2. Bryce Richards aboard the 311 Yamaha from the 85 novice class move ahead of the 65 riders in the early going. In the 65 class at the end of lap number 1 was Timmy Harris aboard the 504 who controlled the early lead. As the battle for the front, the 85 would ensue between Garrett Lauterbach and Super Mini rider Tyler Martin aboard the Kawasaki. Harris would hold a big lead over the rest of the 65 field, which included the number 4, Joey Cunningham, who would run the number 2 spot, and Blayson Moore aboard the 99 in 3rd. Super Mini rider Zach Dewhurst would have a problem early and drop back to the back of the pack in row number 2, as Bryce Richards would continue to lead the way in the 85 novice class. Later in the race, Tyler Martin would control the lead on the number 30 Kawasaki with Garrett Lauterbach aboard the Honda close in tow. Ryan Richards would be in a distant 3rd, but mechanical issues would continue to hinder the number 5 Yamaha later into the race, as Aaron Magditch would control the 4th spot physically on the racetrack. Johnny Reagan would come through 5th, and he would run 4th in the mini senior class at the end of lap number 2. Harris on the 504 would continue to stretch out his lead in the 65 class over Cunningham, while Dewhurst would continue to struggle in the super mini class, and Bryce Richards would continue to control things in the 85 novice class. Blayson Moore would come through in 3rd in the 65 class, 1 minute off the pace of Joey Cunningham in the number 2 spot. Logan Riley, who's experiencing mechanical problems of his own, would round out the field in 4th, heading into lap number 3. Lauterbach would retake the lead from Tyler Martin for the physical and the overall lead, as Martin would experience a crash that would put him in the number 2 spot just ahead of Ryan Richards aboard the Yamaha. Problems would continue to arise for placing more as he was trying to run down Cunningham, but to no avail, as Riley would slowly start to creep up on the number 99 Kawasaki. Lauterbach still out front, ahead of Martin and Richards, as they headed deeper into the race in session number 3. Martin would continue to try to apply pressure to Lauterbach, but to no avail, as more mistakes would cost the Kawasaki pilot later on in the race. Magditch on the 121 K10 will continue to run third in the mini senior class, stretching out his gap over the 709 Suzuki of Johnny Reagan. Lauterbach would take the win. Martin would hold on for second. In the final stages of the race, Ryan Richards would experience a crash and a knee injury that would force him out of the race early, as Harris would take the win in the 65 class over Cunningham. Moore would take a third spot over Logan Riley, who would hold on for fourth. As Richards, having the knee issues, would pull off the track, he would not return to racing action. Magditch would take over second in the mini senior class, and Johnny Reagan would move up to third, as Tyler Martin would win the super mini class over Zach Dewhurst. Bryce Richards would hold on for the win in the 85 novice division. That's how everything would wrap up in session number 3, the mini session. Session number 4 would light off, which included the Open A, the 250B, the Heavyweight B, the 4-stroke Heavy B, and the Heavyweight Novice Riders. In the Open A class, it was Evans who would control things through turn number 1, as well as turn number 2, as Rory Mead would stick his nose to the inside and try and make a pass on the West Virginia native. Colin Thomas, aboard the new Kawasaki 450, would get off to once again another slow start and had to play catch-up, about 10 seconds behind the rest of the field. As 250B would take off, it was Andy Kinnison with the whole shot over Jake Walters. Strickland and Beccarelli would tuck into third and fourth, with Bill Wayne in fifth aboard the Honda. Porsche Heavy B, they would take off. Tom Morrison would take the early lead over Jay Downhour. Downhour quickly, with a move to the inside, would take over the top spot. Morris would tuck in for second, Ryan Dupler in third, and Brent Winlip would round out fourth in the early going in the 4-stroke Heavy B class. In the heavyweight novice class, Jeremy Randolph aboard the K10 would take over the whole shot. TJ Brooks would tuck in for second. Michael Bale would go side by side with Brooks heading into turn number 2. With the first lap of racing complete in the pro class, it was Evans ahead of Clamfith. Montgomery would slot in ahead of Colin Thomas in third and fourth. Strickland would lead the way in the 250B class. Downhour would control things in the 4-stroke Heavy B class over Tom Morrison. Brian Windland would move up to the number 3 spot. As the battle ensued for the heavyweight novice class, Chrisman, with a nice line inside of Nutter, would take over the top spot at the completion of lap number 1. Jeff Evelyn would run third in the heavyweight novice class early, as lap number 2 would begin. Sam Evans would still control things. Rory Mead would move into the number 2 spot, as Colin Thomas aboard the Kawasaki would be making up for lost time using some motocross tricks that he has used in the past to move into the number 3 spot and gain ground on Rory Mead and Sam Evans. Jake Walters would take over the lead in the 250B class. Dalton Beccarelli would slide into the number 2 spot aboard the 419 machine, as Strickland would have problems aboard the 343 Husky. Nutter would begin to open his lead up in the heavyweight novice class. Jeremy Randolph would take over the number 2 spot ahead of Bobby Chrisman aboard the Yamaha. riders were beginning to end lap number 3. Meade would begin to close on Evans, as Thomas would begin to close on the front 2 and start to make this a 3-rider fight for the lead. Meade would continue to close, but closing in faster would be Thomas aboard the 711 from Laurelville, Ohio. Downhour would continue to lead things in the 4-stroke heavy B class, continuing to stretch his lead out over Tom Morrison and Brent Winland. Nutter would continue to lead, but closing in quickly with Bobby Christman aboard the 136 Yamaha as he dropped Jeremy Randolph behind him. Moving back to the pro class, at the halfway point of the race, it was still Evans over Meade. Thomas was continuing to surge, as Evans would still lead Meade at the start of lap number 4, with Thomas right in tow aboard the Kawasaki. Halfway point of lap number 4, 3 riders separated the top 3. 5 seconds separated the top 3, as Thomas would move into the number 2 spot ahead of Rory Meade and continue to apply pressure to the number 27 of Sam Evans. Thomas tried to make a move on the inside. Evans, with the horsepower on the 250, just holding on. As Downhour would continue to pull things out in the 4-stroke heavy B class, Strickland in the 250B class would make a charge to the front ahead of Vecchiarelli and Jake Walters. Nutter would continue to lead things toward the 147 KTM in the heavyweight novice class. In the end, it was Colin Thomas who would make the pass in the last lap ahead of Sam Evans. Rory Meade would continue to stay in third at the completion of the race. Jordan Strickland would hold on for the 250B class win ahead of Jake Walters and Dalton Vecchiarelli. 4-stroke heavy B would go to the 413 machine of Jay Downhour, and the heavyweight novice win was won by Michael Nutter aboard the 147. As you can see by the pro class, it was that close between the top 3, Thomas, Evans, and Rory Meade. The final gap between the top 3, 12 seconds. That would separate Thomas, Evans, and Meade at the finish line, and that would wrap up session number 4. In session number 5, the 50cc riders, Joey Cunningham and Blason Moore would be the ones battling out in the 50cc 7-8 class, as Moore would take the early lead over the number 4 machine of Cunningham. Carter Fouts aboard the 65 would run in third in the early going and would continue to stay there for the remainder of the race. Later on in the moto, Cunningham would continue to close on Blason Moore aboard the 99B machine, as Fouts would continue to run in third. A lonely third for Fouts, as Cunningham was beginning to surge and make up ground on Blason Moore. As they head in and out of the trees, Cunningham would make the pass on Moore and begin to pull away ahead of the Gloucester native. Brian Conkey, in his first race ever aboard a PW50, would run third in the 54-6 class behind Landon Hamilton and Dakota Cunningham. Hamilton would control things from the get-go in the 4-6 class ahead of Dakota Cunningham, as Conkey, in his first race ever, circulated laps around the Action Sports Moto Park track. Cunningham would continue to stretch his gap over Moore as they were beginning to roll into lap traffic, which included Dakota Cunningham and Landon Hamilton. Hamilton aboard the 67 would have things all his way. A whole shot in the 4-6 class ahead of this man right here, number 5, Dakota Cunningham, and would lead from flag to flag. Donkey would continue to roll in the number 3 spot aboard the Yamaha. Only one lap down in your leaders by the end of the race. Carter Fouts would continue to roll in the number 3 position in the 7-8 class in a lonely third for the day. And that would wrap it up as Cunningham would take the win over Moore, Fouts in third. Hamilton would take the 4-6 win over Cunningham and Conkey to move into session number 6, which is the Schoolboy 1 and 2 riders, 16 to 24. At the start of the 16 to 24 class and the 25 plus class, it was Rory Mead in the 25 plus class who would take the early lead. 30 plus, it was Jason Ross with the 121 ahead of Jeremy Randolph and Chaz Patton. Schoolboy 1 and 2 riders, it was Devin Byer and Sam Evans duking it out for the whole shot. Byer would control it. Evans in second. Nick Story in third. 40 plus class, Keith Gwynn off to early lead ahead of Nick Story. And in the 50 plus class, it was Jeff Miller for the 667 Yamaha who would get things started off early in the 50 plus class ahead of Andy Chapman and Mark Randolph aboard the Husky. Beginning of lap number 2, Rory Mead would continue to stretch out the lead over Dalton Beccarelli, who would lead the way in the 16 to 24 class. Jason Ross would lead things in the 30 plus class aboard the 121 Yamaha, while Shade Huntley aboard the 727 Yamaha would lead things in the 25 plus. Byer would lead Schoolboy 1 over Nick Story, while Austin Evans would lead things early in the Schoolboy 2 class. Gwynn would lead the way in the 40 plus over Mark Kales, and 667 Jeff Miller would lead things in the 50 plus ahead of Andy Chapman. Lap number 3, Rory Mead still out front aboard the RPM Motorsport Sports Cycles KTM over Beccarelli and Ross. Byer would continue to move up the ladder from row number 4. Jonathan Mullins from the 16 to 24 class, Keith Gwynn from the 40 plus, and Austin Evans from Schoolboy 2 would continue to run well. Corey Atwood in the 30 plus class and Nick Story from Schoolboy 1, goggles off, would continue to roll in their respective classes. Vince Kolach aboard the number 48 Suzuki would run 5th in the 50 plus class ahead of Mark Cahill aboard the K0. Lap number 5, Mead was still out front for the number 3 machine. Mechanical issue though, before the end of the lap, would halt Mead's chances of taking the overall win. Alex Ancrum would run the number 2 spot in the Schoolboy 2 class. Shane Huntley would continue to lead the way in the plus 25 after the absence of Rory Mead. Story from the 40 plus, from the Schoolboy 1 class, and Justin Story from the 40 plus would run just outside the top 10 in the overall. Brian Cochran from the 25 plus would run the number 2 spot aboard the 722 Honda. Beccarelli, now your new leader after the early absence of Rory Mead, would lead things physically and overall, as well as the class leader in the 16 to 24. Jason Ross would continue to lead the way in the 30 plus class. Devin Byer, behind him from the Schoolboy 1 row, would continue to move up the ladder in the overall. Jackson, Ohio natives Shade Huntley and Jeff Miller would swap positions several times. Beccarelli would take the class win in the 16 to 24. Byer would hold on for Schoolboy 1. Evans with the Schoolboy 2 win. Huntley would take the plus 25 win. 30 plus would go to the 121 of Jason Ross. Keith Wynn would hold on to the 40 plus win over Scott Strickland. 50 plus would be the 667 Yamaha of Jeff Miller. And that would round things out in session number 6, as Nick Story aboard the 911 would take second in the Schoolboy 1 class in his first appearance of the year at Action Sports. Moving on to the final session of the day, session number 7, the ATV class, as the A and B riders would get off the line first. Seth Mumford aboard the 900 Honda would take the early lead over Cole Shiflett in the Pro class, and Lane Riggs would take the early lead in the B class aboard the number 15 Honda. In the C class, Brandon Thompson would get out to the early lead aboard of Jordan Pfizer. And Rick Baker would take the early lead in the 40 plus class over Mike Charlton. At the end of lap number 1, it was Mumford out front. Shiflett would run into mechanical problems, as Tyler Miller aboard the 64 machine would take second place physically and lead the way in the B class at the end of lap number 1. Lane Riggs would run the number 2 spot right behind Miller as they headed into the start of lap number 2 of racing. Dalton Coy aboard the 209 would run third in your B class ahead of Cody Stanley and Colton Longstrip. Longstrip would be forced to retire after a mechanical issue during the second lap of racing. In the C class, it was Pfizer who would take the lead at the completion of lap number 1 over Thompson aboard the 390, as the 2 Yamaha riders would duke it out for the early lead. Mike Charlton would take over the lead in the 40 plus class ahead of Rick Baker at the completion of lap number 1 and start to stretch out his lead. As Tim Lutz aboard the Banshee would round out third in the 40 plus class in the early going. Mumford would continue to lead in the Pro class. Riggs would take over the lead from Miller in the B class towards the halfway point of lap number 2. Riggs would continue to stretch it out aboard the 15, as Coy would run a lonely third aboard the Kawasaki on the 209. Pfizer and Thompson would continue to battle it out to lead the C class. Longstrip still running before his mechanical issues took him out of the action. Charlton would still lead the way in the 40 plus class over Baker and Lutz. Charlton would continue to pull the lead. Baker was beginning to make mistakes, dropping further behind. Later in the race, the battle was on between Pfizer and Thompson in your C class, as the 2 Yamaha riders would continue to bang bars throughout the rest of the race. Mumford would continue to roll in the Pro class aboard the Treadway Cycles Honda, as he was left unchallenged from the mechanical failures of Cole Shiflett. His next challenge would be Miller and Riggs, as Riggs would continue to lead the way, Miller in second, Coy in third. As Charlton would continue to stretch his gap out over Rick Baker aboard the 795 Yamaha, and Lutz would continue to run third aboard the 870. Mumford would continue to press on the later stages of the race, as all he was doing was trying to beat his personal time and beat his personal lap after lap. Riggs would continue to lead the way in the B class ahead of Miller, as Thompson would continue to roll in the C class lead as he took it over Pfizer and begin to close on the B class and third place Dalton Coy. Pfizer would lose ground to Thompson in a costly mistake that would drop Pfizer back to a lonely second place at the end of the race. Charlton would continue to pull away aboard the Yamaha machine ahead of Rick Baker. Baker would continue to make mistakes and eventually fall victim to fatigue and lose even more time to Charlton, as Miller would continue to roll to the B class lead. At the end of the race, Mumford with the Pro Class win. Riggs would take the win in the B Class over Miller and Coy. C Class would be won by Thompson over Jordan Pfizer and Larry Gilbreth, and the 40-plus win would be controlled by Mike Charlton over Rick Baker and Tim Lutz. And that would wrap things up here at round number 5 of the 2013 Action Sports Grand Prix Championship Series. I'd like to thank you for watching the Action Sports Racing Highlight Show from here in August. We hope to see you out at the Moto Park. For more info, head to actionsportsracing.com. Thanks for watching.